Welcome back, everyone. It's FNHusa57 here. We are back on Neverwinter on the Xbox One, and this video has been a long time in the making. I did have some technical difficulties with my headset, but I got those fixed. So, anyways, this is going to be my level 70 Control Wizard build for PVE. This is a pure DPS spec. I did another build to give you guys another option if you did not have your initial stats rolled correctly. I have another video that goes for a DPS/support build, and I'll leave a link to that video. But we're going to start off and go through. The first thing that we're going to start with is your basic character stats. I should mention that this is after the Mod 6 update. So the level cap has been bumped up to 70. There's been tons of changes between the mod that we were on and Mod 6. So the biggest change is not having a way to heal, with lifesteal being basically nerfed, and a couple other changes. So for the DPS build, we've pretty much remained the same. Your primary stat is intelligence. The two secondary stats are wisdom and charisma. I have chosen to go all into wisdom and charisma because charisma gives me a greater critical chance, greater companion stat bonus, and greater combat advantage damage, whereas wisdom gives you recharge speed, action point gain, control bonus, and control resist, which is good considering that the one thing that this build is lacking is actually basically recovery. But that's the path that I've chosen, and since we got level 70, you get an additional 2 points. It does take a while to get to level 70, and your gear is going to change quite a bit. Power is still something that you absolutely want to stack as much of as possible. Since we don't really have a way to heal, hit points is very important still. Critical strike, not so much. Armor pen, extremely important. Recovery, extremely important. And then defense actually is pretty decent right now. The more of it that you can have, the better, but this build focuses on DPS. So that's why we haven't gone completely and bumped up the defense yet. Now, I'm putting this build out just to give you an idea of the powers, the feats, boons, your basic spec. My armor is definitely not endgame armor for level 70. I'll probably be going with elemental elven gear or corrupted black ice since it's a DPS build, but it's going to take a while to get there. So in the meantime, I would recommend you either use a full set of T2 or you try and get the Burning Executioner gear, which is PvP gear. It's good for PvE, but it's definitely meant for PvP because you do lose some recovery as to other gear. Also, you'll see that I do have the new Elemental Fire Talisman, which all in good time I will actually be able to change it because this is pretty cool. You do get, your normal enchantment slots, and I do have to refine it, but you get the artifact powers, and you can actually change it. It's a random chance of changing it, so you'll unlock a random one, and it is pretty expensive to do. But in this case, what you're going to want is either Storm Spell, or what I'm going to try and get is going to be Eye of the Storm to increase my critical severity even more. And at that point, on the next double refinement event, I will go ahead and actually use my other elemental fire artifact weapon. But for now, I'm using the Chilling Eye of the Golden Dragon. So we're going to take a look at the powers that I use. They haven't changed a whole lot, except at level 70, you get rank 4, and rank 4 pretty much gives additional damage. So we'll start with your at-wills. They're going to be basically the same as what they were before. Ray of Frost I keep on the left trigger, and then I use Chilling Cloud on the right trigger. I do also have for PvE, or PvP, I should say, sorry, I have the Storm Pillar. I use that occasionally, but not very often. And then is slotted on your actual encounter powers, which this is where pretty much the most of your damage is going to come from, is Conduit of Ice, and I only keep that in the RB slot because it adds Chill now, which is the spell mastery effect to any targets hit by it, and of course get that up to rank 4. Then we're going to go down here, and I keep Icy Terrain on my X button, and then Sudden Storm as Y, and Steal Time as B. Those are pretty much all the encounter powers I ever use. As far as dailies, I use Oppressive Force. This is going to be what you use to control and destroy mobs, and it does a decent amount of damage to bosses, but it's not really meant for single target. It also dazes enemies, which is another added benefit. And then your single target daily, it should be Ice Knife. And that can do, well, with my particular build, the highest I've critted is an 82,000. So it can do a lot of damage. Now for your personals, the two that I found that I like the best are still Storm Spell, because you have a 30% chance on a critical attack to basically shock the opponent, strike them with a lightning bolt. And that actually does quite a bit of damage, considering you want to pair it with Eye of the Storm. And that basically allows you, when you enter combat, you get a 100% critical chance for, it starts off as 4 seconds, but when you finally get it ranked up to level 4, it goes to a total of 7 seconds. So for the first 7 seconds of combat, you have a 100% critical strike chance, and that's just absolutely awesome. The new powers, Disintegrate, Imprisonment, Frost Wave, all of those, I really don't find them that useful, so I didn't bother to do anything with them. Now moving on to probably what you are all waiting for, which are feats. Your feat points, I've changed a little bit. I haven't changed a whole lot because this is still a DPS build, but I did switch a few things up. Starting with the heroics, the first one, or your first tier, tier 1, I skipped completely controlling action because we have other items that will give us action point gain, so you don't really need that. But weapon mastery, which is boost your critical chance, 3 of 3 on that one. And toughness, increase your maximum hit points. Hit points are actually now pretty important, so 3 of 3 on that to boost your hit points by 9%. Moving on to the tier 2 heroics, Wizard's Wrath. Your area of effect powers deal 3% more damage. 3 of 3 on that one. Battle-wise, you create up to 6% less threat is pretty much useless because this is a DPS build, so you will be generating massive threat. Massive damage equals massive threat. Fight on, your encounter cooldowns are reduced by up to 10% if you put 5 points in it. I tried that, I didn't really like it. I bumped it down to only 3, which gives me a 6% cooldown. Seems to be just about right for me since the build is lacking in recovery a little bit, at least for now. Moving on to tier 3 heroic, I use Blightning Power. Your cold powers deal an additional up to 6% damage to targets affected by chill. 3 of 3 in that one. However, that is it for the tier 3 category because Lightning Teleport is basically useless, and Arcane Enhancement, we really only have one power that's Arcane base, and it's an area of effect, so we don't really need that. Also, Focus Wizardry is for single target powers. It's good if you're a PvP build, but not very good for PvE. Also, I don't go with the team support one because this is pure DPS, so your primary stat is going to be intelligence. So you want 5 of 5 in Learned Spellcaster. That gives you an additional 5% bonus damage from your intelligence stat. Now we'll move into where things get a little bit tricky, which is your Paragon points. You can either go Renegade, the Tarmutagen, or Oppressor path, and I have a hybrid here between Tarmutagen and Oppressor, and that I've found for me to work the best. So we'll start in the Tarmutagen path, which is going to use the majority of your points. The first level is going to be Tempest Magic, where when your target is below 30% max hit points, you deal up to an additional 5% damage. 5 of 5 on that. It's a DPS build, so more damage. That's kind of a no-brainer. Then Malevolent Surge, when you kill a foe, you gain up to 5% more damage, and that lasts 15 seconds. 5 of 5 on that. That's also a no-brainer. It's very effective. And that allows you to completely skip the Tier 2. Destructive Wizardry, not really that useful unless Storm Pillar is going to be your primary at will, and I don't use it that much, so I don't think it's worth it. And then Snap Freeze is totally useless because everything that we do applies stacks at chill, so it's pretty much pointless to have. Now we get into the new ones for Mod 6, which is Elemental Reinforcement. This is actually a pretty cool one because when you cast a Fire, Arcane, Cold, or Lightning encounter power, you gain up to a 5% damage increase for 10 seconds, and each elemental power type can apply that bonus separately, so it stacks. Our spell tray only has, at best, 3 different powers: Cold, Arcane, and Lightning. So I only put 2 of 5 points in that. That gives me a 2% increase for each type of power. So if I use the entire rotation, that's a 6% increase, which is a considerable amount of damage. Now, to help out with recovery, though, we have this new ability that you can pick, which is Spell Twisting. Your encounter powers apply Spell Twisting for 10 seconds, which stacks up to 3 times. When you cast an at-will power, your stacks of Spell Twisting are consumed to reduce the cooldown time on recharging powers by up to 10% per stack. So on this, 5 of 5, because if you have 3 stacks, so basically if you go XYB on your rotation, then you'll have 3 stacks of Spell Twisting, and then your at-will will allow you to reduce your cooldowns by 30%. So that's pretty decent. It helps out quite a bit, so you don't have to stack recovery as much. I also use Frozen Power Transfer. Chilling Cloud now grants you up to 5% bonus damage for every target you strike with the 3rd strike, and that bonus lasts up to 20 seconds and can stack up to 3 times. So decent amount, a little bit extra damage because you will be using your at-wills while your encounter powers are on cooldown. Then, of course, you take Elemental Empowerment, 5 of 5 on that one. Basically, it gives you up to a 15% chance of applying Creeping Frost. Creeping Frost deals 85% of your weapon damage as cold damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. It also has a similar effect with arcane damage, and that's gotta have 5 of 5. And then the last one, which is where a lot of your damage comes from, is Assailing Force. Dealing damage to foes has a chance to grant you Assailant. When you have Assailant, your next encounter power deals 15% of the target's max HP as unresistible damage, max at 800% of your weapon damage, though. So it will top out, depending upon your weapon, 8, 10, 12k, but still that's a pretty nice hit to go in there along with the normal damage that your powers would do. For the last few points, I like to go to the Oppressor Path and 5 of 5 on Bitter Cold, so targets affected by chill take up to 5% more damage. That's awesome. It only lasts 6 seconds, but basically with this build it constantly refreshes. Then Chilling Control, Sudden Storm applies up to 5 stacks of chill to targets hit by the primary strike. You do have to aim carefully with that, but basically it allows you to almost instantly freeze targets, which is very useful, in addition to the fact that Sudden Storm already does an incredible amount of damage. Then I put my last 3 points into Icy Veins, which, since most of the time the way I like to play still is close quarters combat, AoE, and high critical, I like this a lot. If you're playing as a ranged build, you probably won't. But basically, when you activate an encounter power, all foes within 15 feet of you have instantly applied up to 5 stacks of chill. Now, with 3 of 5 points remaining, that means that every time you use an encounter, all the enemies within 15 feet of you will have 3 stacks of chill applied to them. So basically, within use of 2 encounter powers, you can freeze pretty much everything around you, especially if you have icy terrain down. So for me, that's a must-have, and that rounds out all of my points. Now for boons, I haven't had a lot of time to unlock a lot of boons yet. I've been working on the Dread Ring campaign, so I do have the first one in that, which I took the 250 power, 250 movement speed, because power does not suffer from the law of diminishing return. Icewind Dell doesn't really have that great of boons, so I took the first one, which is 400 AoE resist, because some of the most damaging attacks in the game are AoE, and I do have several of the Tyranny of Dragons boons unlocked, which in Mod 6 they were upgraded from 200 to 400. So I took 400 power, then 400 critical strike, 400 armor pen, and then 400 lifesteal. I haven't picked my last boon yet because that's going to be affected by my endgame armor. Companions, we have new companions coming out, so it's kind of personal preference what you want. One of the companions I definitely recommend having active with you is the basically the Cantankerous Mage, because its active bonus is a 15% control bonus. And then the companion you're going to want to have summoned all the time is one of the Ion Stones. I use the Ion Stone of Allura because on encounter use it has a 7% chance to slow your target, and it's an augmentation companion. So 100% of its stats are granted to you to buff your stats. I also take the Were-Rat Thief because it has a 3% chance on encounter use to poison the target, but it's pretty much personal preference on that one. I will do an update to my gear list a little bit later when I get my endgame gear, and basically depending upon your gear and what you're fighting, your rotation normally is going to be X, Y, B, and that is more than enough to basically freeze anything around you. I would do this in a combat area, but there's kind of no point in going to a level 72 or 73 area because you do need basically some way to regen your health, and potions aren't that great, so your only option is damage, and basically to kill the enemy before they can do much damage to you. So it's one of those builds where you do damage first and basically you're a nuke. And then of course you can use your dailies and things like that. I will go to the Drowned Shore, which will only be a level 61 area in the starting place, but just to give you an idea. And since they did muck with lifesteal, it is hard to do a dungeon or a high level skirmish or even go to like Well of the Dragons or something like that without a way to regen your health. So you might want to have your healing companion or be in a group hopefully with a cleric. But other than that, it's pretty easy to do. You can also run into a group and lead with Steal Time, but of course these guys aggroed on the other guy, but that's okay. So let me kill them, and then I'll go ahead and actually find a group that is off by themselves, and I can show you the cooldown reduction. Sometimes, depending on the group, I like to lead with Steal Time, because leading with Steal Time will stun them. There's those 3 stacks of chill, and there they're frozen. So definitely that helps out that Icy Veins power. I like it quite a bit. The other option that you have is I'm going to use 3 encounter powers to show you the spell twisting. So I have basically 8 seconds. Now I have 4 seconds on the cooldown for Sudden Storm. So definitely one of those things that's a bonus to have and pretty much allows you to wreck enemies. So hopefully you guys found the video helpful and this build will work for you. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to my Renegade build, which is a DPS support build. And by all means, leave a comment. Let me know how it worked out for you. Otherwise, smash the like button and make sure you subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.